This meeting is being recorded.
Hi guys, I think we share screen with Neil. But somewhere it's like echoing.
welcome to today's webinar on education to employment, youth with disabilities and their needs post-COVID-19. My name is Catherine Ruchek. I'm based here in the UNESCO Bangkok office. A very warm welcome to everyone. I think we have around 200 registered participants today, so thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is co-organized by UNESCO, UNICEF, Leonard Cheshire, and ILO. This event brings together 6 youths from across the Asia-Pacific region. Namely, we have Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Fiji. So these youths will come to discuss the challenges of youth with disabilities and their needs in terms of accessing employment opportunities. We also have representatives from the co-organizers who are going to speak at the webinar as well. Before we begin, please allow me to go through some housekeeping information as well as the agenda for today. So for the agenda, in a few minutes, we will begin with some welcoming remarks from UNESCO and Leonard Cheshire, followed by a video launch to commemorate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. After that, we will have a keynote speaker from ILO to talk about the transition period from school to employment for persons with disabilities in the Asia-Pacific region, followed by a panel discussion with the 6 youth leaders to provide insights into how to ensure that existing gaps between education and employment for persons with disabilities can be addressed or at least minimized in a meaningful way. And then we will have, after the panel discussion, we have 20 minutes of Q&A and closing remarks. So for the participants, please make sure that you're signed in with your name and also your country as well, so we know who you are and where you're from. This webinar is being recorded. Any questions or comments to our panelists, please feel free to type into the Q&A box. We will do our best to include your questions in the Q&A session. But in case we run out of time, we will try to collect your questions and we'll provide some responses at a later stage. Live captioning is available during this webinar. Please click on the closed captions and then click Show Subtitles, and you'll be able to read the captions. At the end of the webinar, you'll be redirected to the exit survey. So we would very much appreciate if you could spend a couple of minutes to complete the short survey so that we could improve our future webinars. At the registration, we have received some advanced questions from the participants. So thank you for that. But please note that some of the questions relating to remote learning and also relating to education response to COVID-19. These topics have been discussed at our previous webinar. So you can refer to this website for information on those topics. Next slide. And finally, for this webinar, we will be uploading resources, including the speakers' bios, any presentations, and also the video onto the UNESCO Bangkok website as well. And the recording of this webinar will also be on the website as well as UNESCO Facebook page. Okay, in the interest of time, let us just begin our webinar. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Nini Tuang. Nini has more than 20 years of development experience in the areas of education, planning, statistics, in the field offices as well as at the headquarters as well. Currently, Nini is the Acting Chief of Section for Inclusive Quality Education at the UNESCO Bangkok office. Nini, your opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, thank you. So, dear colleagues, participants, and you leaders across the regions. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to the webinar on this International Day for Persons with Disability. Title, we call it Education to Employment, as Catherine mentioned, youth with disability and their need post-COVID-19. Firstly, please let me extend my appreciation to the co-chair of the Asia Pacific Disability Inclusive Education Working Group, Leonard Cheshire, UNICEF APRO, as well as ILO for coordinating today's important events. As the region is still in different phase of the COVID-19, it is important for us to reflect on how the situation has been and is still impeding the life of persons with disabilities. The webinar is the follow on from our previous webinar in August, Disability Inclusive Education Response to COVID-19, and we seek to highlight the critical area that is pivotal in ensuring that existing gaps between education and employment of persons with disability can be addressed meaningfully. So the International Day for Persons with Disability annual observance, with the first proclaimed in 1992 by our UN General Assembly, it is a day to promote the understanding of disability issue and mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disability, as well as to increase awareness for benefits that can be derived from the integration of persons with disability in every aspect of political, social, economical, and cultural life. So in connection to this year, we call it IDPD 2020 things, building back better toward the disability inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. And we transitioned into the recovery phase of COVID-19. The health, education, and other systems will have to be adapted to accommodate the new risk we face in our everyday life. So we need to prepare for new normals. So let's take this opportunity to build back better and build back in the way that it's more inclusive and ensure no one is left behind in the response and recovery by removing barriers and making society more accessible and sustainable. So today's webinar aims to discuss important issues that youth with disability face every day. Challenge in finding employment opportunity after they complete their educations. The disability and the structural inequality that we have seen in society before the crisis are being exacerbated by the multifaceted impact of the COVID-19 crisis. Although the Convention on the Right for the Person with Disability, adopted in 2006, has contributed to the right and well-being of the person with disability in general, disability discrimination is still prevalent and affects people with disability in seeking employment. For example, in our region, according to the UNESCO Disability Survey in 2015, the employment rate for the person with disability compared to overall population in Cambodia is 43%, and in Thailand is 40%. In Afghanistan is 28%, in Samoa is 23%. So while inequity in educational and skill development resources can be impact their competitiveness in the labor markets, negative attitudes about disability and discrimination on the basis of disability are the most prevalent and the primary obstacle to the successful employment of the people with disability. Although many studies have shown that people with disability are just as productive, dependable, and less absent from the work than workers without disability, negative perception of youth with disability and misconception held by the employer often pose a significant barrier to youth with disability looking more for employment. The situation of young women with disability even worse off, as they have to counter disability and gender-based social prejudice. In fact, Article 27 of the Convention of particularly deal with the work with the employment. The article recognizes the right to work in a labor market that is open, inclusive, and accessible. But it requires member states to promote the realization of that right through, among other, prohibition of the discrimination, promotion of employment opportunity and career advancements, and protection of just and favorable conditions of work. Today, the panel discussion, I am pleased to welcome 6 youth from our Asia and the Pacific region to share their first-hand experience and perspective on the transition from school to employment. So they will discuss practical action that can be taken to enable you with the disability to acquire the right skill and right jobs, as well as discuss right risk mitigation measures to ensure you with disability are stay employed. I hope that the result from this discussion today can effectively contribute to the development or the relevant and targeted strategy in building a more inclusive and equitable society that facilitates employment opportunity for youth with disability in our region beyond the COVID-19 crisis. So with that, I wish you all the best with the webinar, and thank you so much. So, Kat, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nini, for the opening remarks. Our next opening remarks will be from Ms. Barker Henry. She has worked in the development and disability sector for more than 17 years within the region. Barker is a strong advocate for disability rights as well as children, youth, and women's empowerment. Currently, Barker is the Regional Manager, Program Development and Resourcing at Leonard Cheshire, East Asia Pacific Regional Office. Over to you, Barker, for the opening remarks and the video launch.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and our young friends, thank you very much for attending this webinar today. On the occasion of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, Leonard Cheshire is pleased to partner in organizing the event with UNESCO, UNICEF, and ILO Bangkok Regional Bureau offices. Estimates suggest that there are between 180 and 220 million youth with disabilities worldwide, and nearly 80% of them live in developing countries. Youth with disabilities often face marginalization and severe social, economic, and civic disparities as compared with those without disabilities due to a range of factors from stigma to inaccessible environments. As evidenced through the findings from Leonard Cheshire's 2030 and Counting project, among the biggest concerns for youth with disabilities is that of achieving successful employment. Education for all youth is critical for realizing their full potential. Yet, children with disabilities have lower probability of entering school, as well as staying and advancing in school as children without disabilities. By the time they enter adolescence, many youth with disabilities run a high risk of being illiterate, leading to restricted opportunities for further education, employment, and income generation. For youth with disabilities who are excluded from community participation and interaction in the formal years, transition into adult independence in the real world can be particularly challenging. Not receiving the skills and qualifications, or only part of them, to function in the wider society limits the employment opportunities for youth with disabilities. Unemployment rates for persons with disabilities are higher than persons without disabilities in every society across age groups. Many persons with disabilities are offered low-paying jobs or may be employed in the informal sector. While inequities in educational and skill development resources can impact their competitiveness in the labor market, negative attitudes about disability and discrimination on the basis of disability, as well as lack of reasonable adjustments, are the most prevalent and primary obstacles to the successful employment of young persons with disabilities. The experience that people face in the youth shape the rest of their lives. Youth with disabilities face the same issues and concerns as their peers without disabilities. More work is required to harness the potential of younger generation with disabilities and for them to have the right opportunities to achieve their full potential. We are at an important point in time. As the pandemic continues to reshape our lives in ways that are unprecedented, it is also giving us a rare window to look into the shortcomings in our preparedness for an inclusive world and to build a better, safer, and more inclusive sense of normal. Persons with disabilities have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic and its consequences. There may be more ways than one to address the needs that persons with disabilities have, but it has highlighted the urgency that is needed in our actions. As such, this webinar comes at an apt time where we are not only able to gather, but build a strong grounds to collaborate and take forward our goal of inclusion and be better prepared for a new future of work. I'm very excited to let you know that today's webinar is unique. We have young persons with disabilities from across the Asia-Pacific region who will be leading the panel discussion. This co-created approach places youth with disabilities at the heart of issues that affect their lives and demonstrates their role not as passive recipients of programs, but as actors in development. They will share their experiences and their additional needs to address the existing gap between education and employment. There's also an exciting video to watch. It features youth leads from Leonard Cheshire's Access to Employment project in Thailand and senior representatives from leading organizations in the region. On behalf of Leonard Cheshire, I would like to thank UNESCO, UNICEF, ILO, Asia Pacific Center on Disabilities, Disabilities Thailand, Social Innovation Foundation, Transportation for All, and all the youth leads who have contributed to the video. I wish you all a very happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and I hope you enjoy the webinar and enjoy watching the video. Thank you very much.
Estimates suggest that in Asia Pacific, out of 690 million people, 15% live with disability. Youth with disabilities are the most marginalized and poorest of the region's youth. They are routinely excluded from most educational, economic, social, and cultural opportunities.
The greatest of the goals in life sometimes is the limitation we set for ourselves, what we think we can and cannot do. And when we let our passion speak for us, we can rise above them. I am a videographer and I am passionate about face makeup, beauty, and fashion.
Hi, I'm JJ. I'm a tech savvy, and through my interaction with people, I am going to raise awareness about employment opportunities of persons with Asperger's and autism.
Hello, I am Tan. I have found a dream inspirational within myself. I am a professional motivational speaker and encourage people to think positively.
Hello, I am Kim. Through my work, I want to influence the importance of educational needs for children and adults with disabilities.
Through my work in hospitality sector, people can see me as a contributing member of society.
I'm always do what others think I cannot and encourage other people with disability to do the same.
Together, we are inspiring change.
We are breaking barriers.
We are setting new aspirations for what we can do.
We are influencing the right partners.
And we are connecting with the world as passionate as we are.
At UNESCO, we support quality education for all, inclusive for children with disabilities.
At DTS, we ensure the lives of persons with disabilities are protected.
At UNICEF, we support youth with disabilities to reach their full potential, from inclusive education to employment.
At the Asia Pacific Development Center on Disability, we promote an inclusive society through our training to empower persons with disabilities.
Social Innovation Foundation promotes employment of people with disability to help them achieve a better quality of healthy life.
คนพิการต้องมีงานทำ
At Transportation for All, we ensure people with disabilities can go to work through accessible public transport.
At the International Labour Organization, we work to advance social justice and promote decent work for all.
At Leonard Cheshire, through actions and partnerships, we work towards making a fair and inclusive world where everyone can live a life they choose.
Join us.
We are at the start of a change in the making.
Thank you so much, Barka, and thank you for that video. It's very inspiring. Up next, we have our keynote speaker, Mr. Felix Waitenkopf, employment specialist at the International Labour Organization based right here in Bangkok. Felix provides technical advice on employment as part of the ILO Decent Work Support Team for East and Southeast Asia as well as the Pacific. Felix, your keynote, please.
Good afternoon and welcome to everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today with Leonard Cheshire, UNICEF and UNESCO on this International Day of Persons with Disabilities as we put the spotlight on youth transitions into the labor market. The ILO is the UN agency for the world of work. And for the ILO, today is an opportunity for governments, workers and employers organizations, youth, and in fact all of us to focus on the gains to be made from a disability inclusive and human-centered approach to the future of work. For youth, the transition into the labor market is critical. Often your first experiences have important consequences for your future labor market journey. And we know youth is a crucial time of life when you start realizing aspirations and finding your place in society. Even before the COVID-19 crisis, this transition from school to work was a challenging period for many youth in Asia Pacific, as we know from labor force and school to work transition surveys. Youth are more likely to be unemployed than adults, from 3 times more in East Asia to more than 6 times in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. More than 8 out of 10 young workers in Asia Pacific are in informal employment and often with limited social protection. And a particular concern is economic exclusion, with almost 1 out of 4 youth in Asia Pacific in 2019 not in employment, education or training, so-called NEET. Now the COVID-19 crisis in 2020 disproportionately impacts youth through first job disruptions, second disruptions in education and training, and thirdly, importantly, difficulties in transiting from school to work and moving between jobs during this economic crisis. Young people now entering the labor market, they encounter fewer vacancies and compete for jobs with more experienced workers. And this transition is even more challenging for persons with disabilities who are often less likely to be in employment or have decent employment conditions, more likely to be in the informal economy, and not adequately covered by social protection. More challenges also come in the form of exclusion and discrimination, including through societal and norms and attitudes. And this can intersect with other forms of discrimination, such as gender. We also know the lack of access to adequate education and training opportunities can also have implications for the risk of child labor when youth do not have the chance to acquire skills that open decent employment opportunities. So as we celebrate this day, we want to focus on disability-inclusive approaches and opportunities that help unleash the potential and aspirations of all youth during the socioeconomic recovery from COVID-19. This will depend to a large extent on the determination and actions to build a better and inclusive future of work. Let me highlight 5 measures. First, investing in disability-inclusive quality education and skills development. All youth need to continue their professional development throughout the crisis to acquire the skills needed in the labor market and have access to support services that enable training and work in line with international frameworks and labor standards. We also need to recognize and help build the substantive skills and capabilities that youth with disabilities already have, for example, in the creative industry. Second, many countries in Asia-Pacific promote initiatives for employment retention and employment promotion by supporting companies and workers who have lost their jobs. These initiatives need to be inclusive. Third, the COVID-19 crisis has also shown the vital role for social protection measures, including disability benefits for protecting and boosting opportunities and economic empowerment. Fourth, investing in data to shape inclusive labor market policies. Having regular, reliable, and disaggregated country-level data on education, skills, and employment for persons with disabilities is key, including for indicators under SDG 4, 8, and SDG 10. And fifth, beyond the COVID-19 crisis, we know the world of work is undergoing transformative changes, including through technology. And this new normal can also provide greater opportunities. So remote working and digitalization enable companies in new ways. And to achieve this, the ILO Centenary Declaration for the Future of Work sets out a clear framework for governments for a human-centered approach to shape a fair, inclusive, and secure future of work. And finally, inclusion is everyone's responsibility. There are lots of ways to promote disability-inclusive approaches in the labor market, and youth have a key role to play. Workers' organizations can support in promoting rights. Employers have a key role to create a win-win for disability inclusion. The ILO, in fact, has been capitalizing on this momentum through the ILO Global Business and Disability Network, which has joint disability inclusion principles and shares good practices. And we are very pleased that today also marks the relaunch of the National Business and Disability Network in Indonesia in a joint effort to promote employment opportunities. To conclude, the Sustainable Development Goals and decent work for all can be realized only if persons with disabilities are fully and meaningfully included in the world of work and their voices heard. And in that spirit, I'm looking forward to this panel discussion and to hear now from young leaders on their experiences and insights into the transition to the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felix. So up next, we have the panel discussion. So let me give a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Kevin Paul Palaka, volunteer at the Leonard Cheshire Disability Philippines Foundation. Felix was a former president of Young Voices who led fellow youth with disabilities in the campaign for inclusive environment for people with disabilities. Also, he volunteers in various youth groups and is one of the recognized youth leaders in the General Santos City of the Philippines. Kevin, the floor is yours for the panel discussion.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello and welcome everyone to the International Day of Persons with Disabilities 2020 webinar, Education to Employment, Youth with Disabilities and Their Needs. My name is Kevin Paul Palaka. I am the current Assistant Director for Hospital Operations and Patient Support Services at Gensel Medical Center, General Santos City in the Philippines. It is my pleasure to be the moderator of the discussion session for today's webinar. The discussion session will present 6 youths with disabilities who will provide their answers to questions assigned. This session will be in a total of 45 minutes. Each panelist will have 5 minutes to elaborate their answers. I will ensure that all speakers are timely finishing their section. Without further delay, may I present to you the first speaker, Mr. Leslie Tikotikoka. Mr. Leslie is a co-coordinator for the Access to Justice program for persons with disabilities with disability for the Fiji Disabled People's Federation. The question assigned to him is, what are the major challenges faced in school? What are the needs in order to reduce the achievement gap between children with disabilities and their peers? Mr. Leslie, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your question. It is indeed a provoking one, not only for myself, a person with disability, but for all of us. There are a few obstacles I would like to mention that hinder children with disabilities or persons living with disabilities accessing full education, which is not inclusive. This is the lack of inaccessible education currently being faced by students with disabilities that lead to the lack of qualification to further their way forward in looking for employment in the future. I'd like to name some. One is accessibility. Most schools here in Fiji or in the Pacific are not accessible for children or youths with disabilities. This is mainly due to the inaccessible built environment. A very good example, these are no ramps that is wide enough for wheelchair users. Railings or doors are not wide enough for students who use wheelchairs. The accessibility to transport, communication barriers. Deaf children are struggling to find the true deaf identity and finding it difficult to communicate with non-signing peers. Deaf children are finding difficult to access quality information caused by poorly trained interpreters and teachers. Deaf children are struggling to read and write with no resources. Another is the accessibility to mainstream schools and special schools, which are mostly in the main island. And most of the students with disabilities living in the rural and the outer islands, they are left behind. There are also a lack of provision of teachers' aid in schools. This is either in mainstream schools or special schools. The other one is attitudinal. Children and youth with disabilities in the mainstream schools are usually judged by their disabilities rather than their abilities and often face bullying. This affects the students mentally and emotionally, which can further cause of isolation. Another is the lack of counsel or counseling to assist children with disabilities which are at risk. Teachers are not geared to handle children with disabilities. They are not specially trained on how to handle and interact with students with disabilities in school. Another main attitudinal barrier is the switch of teachers from mainstream schools to special schools and special schools to mainstream schools. These are two different scenarios and require special attention. There are times when the teacher is not able to handle this change, and this affects the way to teach students with disability. Thirdly, curriculum. The modification of curriculum to fit learners who have a disability. The curriculum needs to take students with disability into account. In most cases, they are always left behind. An example I'd like to share is on sports. During physical education in the mainstream schools, most sports are played are not inclusive. Students with disabilities, and I can totally relate to this, are usually spectators and left behind. On what you mentioned, what are the needs in order to reduce the achievement gap between children with disabilities and their peers? Firstly, is the removal of discrimination, example, bullying. A lot of awareness and capacity building is needed. The enable of the provision of support services to children with disabilities, the provision of sign language, of interpreters, of special schools, mainstream schools, and university. The provision of assistive devices for children with disabilities, example, wheelchair, crutches, white cane, and braille machines. Disability Support Unit for Children with Disability to support literary skills and deaf identity development. Professional development training is needed for interpreters on quality education in interpreting skills and teachers, staff, and disability awareness. To conclude, in the Conventional Rights of Persons with Disability, or the CRPD, of which Fiji has ratified and passed, disability is defined, how I see it, impairment plus barriers equals disability. But in my definition of disability in the schooling system, impairment plus accessible environment equals inclusion. Benar.
Kevin, I think your mic is not on. Hi, Kevin. Your mic is not on.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. I agree. There should be lots of things to be considered in order for us to attain a more inclusive environment, especially with education. Thank you very much. We now move on. Our second speaker is Mr. Krishnir Sen, who will answer the continuing question of how do these challenges impact future employment opportunities for youth with disabilities. Mr. Krishnir is the current World Federation of the Deaf Oceania President and former UNICEF Pacific Ambassador. Mr. Krishnir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. For the youth with disabilities, they have limited access to white-collar jobs. And these are challenges that we have from the transition from school. And building from that, they do not have the confidence. They do not have the opportunities, and they do a lot of work that's seen as tokenism for other companies. They end up just wiping tables. And also the mentality of other people, their perspectives, looking at the bullies and discriminations and inaccessibilities that they've come through in the school system and going up into looking for jobs. They do not have that confidence to apply for white-collar jobs. And the lack of inclusive policies make employment and stakeholders, the policies are not inclusive. They are more, for instance, I'd like to share an affirmative action is not recognized in the policies. And this makes it more difficult for youths with disabilities. And they're always facing those barriers and a lack of opportunity in looking for employment. And they also tend to lose the confidence because they've had a poor quality of education, poor quality of accessibility, and there is no transition programs designed to accommodate the communication needs. That makes it more difficult for them to know what is the appropriate place that they can have that opportunity. For instance, a sign language interpreter, the poor quality of their work can also be a hindrance to the advancement or to the development of the deaf person. So you see the interpretations in the classrooms is very limited, hence very limited knowledge and capacity of the student, and it goes up into the employment area. So the challenges that we have is the blue-collar jobs, working in vocational in companies like McDonald's or even farm work or wiping tables. So they do not have the skills and the capacity to work in areas of IT or become professional medical personnel or a teacher. So there is a very there is a huge gap there, and there is, and it's always the attitude of these, as Leslie had mentioned, the attitudinal barriers. So there's a lack of passion as well. The youth will, they want to achieve, they have the passion there, but they do not have that motivation, somebody to coach them or to encourage them. There is no motivation there. And that is why it creates a lot of barriers in getting employment opportunities. Another one is low, there is not enough networking. They're illiterate because of that experience they've had from school. They go up and they do not have that, they're unable to read and write, and it even creates a fear in them to be communicating with other people. And the job market there is not fully ready. It is not designed in a way that is accessible for the youth with disabilities. It's not available out there. For instance, there is no the interpreter course, sign language teachers, deaf teachers, yeah. We have deaf teachers, but there are no available courses. So they do not have jobs. So these are some of the challenges that we have. So, and there is a quote, the only disability in life is a bad attitude. So if you look into, if the community can meet us halfway, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Krishnir. We highly appreciate your insight, and thank you so much for expressing the challenges being faced and its vast impact for our sector, particularly with the deaf people. Let's now move on to our third speaker, Mr. Abi Marutama. He now works as the Human Rights Analyst at Ministry of Law and Human Rights, Republic of Indonesia. He will answer the question, what have been the main issues or concerns for job seekers with disabilities? And what has worked well to ensure consideration for interviews and to secure employment? Mr. Abi, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Can I have the presentation slides? Okay, next. Next, please. Next. Yes, next. Next. Okay, got it. Stop. Yes. So the main issue that the Ministry of Law and Human Rights, or you may know it as the Department of Justice in your country, is because we don't have valid data, we don't have reliable data of how many people with disabilities. Even we don't have others. We don't have small data like how to break out how many children with disabilities, how many youth with disabilities. So this is what happens in Indonesia, and I think this is also happened in other countries. So when we don't have valid and reliable data, it is very difficult for the government and the private sector to design the right policy and even legislation to accommodate persons with disabilities. even though we now have in Indonesia, Indonesia has the Indonesian with Disability Act that was passed by the Congress in 2016, but because of the lack of data, the implementation of the law is quite slowing and it's quite challenging because the Department of Social Welfare that is responsible to collect data has not yet been able to collect data. And I think I just would like to mention what Leslie said about the attitudinal barriers. This is also a major concern for young people with disabilities when they look for a desired job, because according to my latest research in 2019, even the Department of Civil Servant Management doesn't know how to employ people with disabilities, how to employ civil servants with disabilities. So as a result, they had to consult this problem with the Department of Law and Human Rights, because the Department of Law is responsible to write implementing regulations and also to provide guidelines for other departments and the private sector on how to employ people with disabilities. And then for the second question, can I move to the next slide, please? Move, next, 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 next. Okay, stop. Yes, I think this is a good example. This is a collaboration between the civil society from South Korea, the Rehabilitation International Korea, with the Indonesian government on how to provide education as well as the employment opportunity. So once students with disabilities join the IT education provided by the Rehabilitation International Korea in Indonesia, they also have a chance to work at Korean companies that operate in Indonesia. For example, they have a chance to work at Samsung or other Korean companies. This is a good example. And because the Korean companies here in Indonesia, they obey the Indonesian with Disability Act, so they are very committed to the very least employ 1% of persons with disabilities from the total employees they have. So, for example, if Samsung has 10 employees, they will likely employ at least one employee with a disability. And can I move to the next slide? Yes, and another thing is the cooperation between the U.S. and Indonesian government. So as you may know, that the U.S. government is very committed to enabling opportunities for everyone around the world with disabilities to enjoy the right to employment or the right to education. So every time the U.S. Embassy here in Indonesia opens job vacancies for people with disabilities for everyone, they also provide that job is also open for people with disabilities. So it's the concept of equal employment opportunity, where people with and without disabilities can compete to get the same job. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. I highly appreciate your presentation. Yes, I do agree. There, indeed, You know, in my country, there's this certain program being implemented also, if I may share, in addition to what you did. Nowadays, ICT is indeed the most known field in which we can employ persons with disabilities. We being the so-called millennials and other, well, types of generations are into this. And I see what you've shared. This could really be a huge, adjustment and change for our sector. Thank you, Mr. Abi, for that wonderful sharing. Let's now move on. May we now have Miss Titi Fon from Ms. Titi Fon is one of the active youth lead of Leonard Cheshire's Access to Employment or A2E project in Thailand. She will answer the question, what are the accessibility needs and employment opportunities as a woman with disabilities? Ms. Titi Fon, the floor is yours.
Greeting everyone. My name is Titiporn Prawatsi. I feel so honored to being one of the panelists today. You can call me my nickname Mai. From my perspective, I think there are many common beliefs affecting how people think. One of the closest one that I'm going to mention is there are too many people think that persons with disabilities can do nothing. About 7 years ago, before I acquired my disability, I worked in entertainment industry as a personal assistant. Everything was great. Sometimes I received a special treatment from others because of the privileges of my role. And after I had an accident, I became a wheelchair user. It was a very big challenge in my life. I feel that I need to ask for help. Actually, everybody sometimes needs help, but I am sure that being persons with disabilities needing help is the number one. I didn't mean being PWD is valueless or bad, but I want to share that we are trying to do things by ourselves. We are still facing barriers. For me as a wheelchair user, equality and quality accessibilities are the main challenges. I used to ride my manual wheelchair along roadside to find a ramp to go up to the pathway. There was no ramp. I still remember that moment vividly because it was my dangerous day. I was really moody and I think I need to do something to feel better. I have spoken out loudly where and how I can access to the pathway. Many people around that area looked at me, some of them trying to find the ramp. And yes, there was no ramp. No one can see it. And I heard they spoke to each other like, why no one installed just one ramp for wheelchair users? By that time, I feel better. I just want that thing. The question that asking for the rights of PWDs like us from common people. And also the public transportations, I feel uncomfortable to use it because of lack of accessible. I used to sit on my wheelchair, which was holding by the security guards on the sliding escalator because there was only escalator working, none of elevator, and nothing safe for me, nothing safe for person with disabilities. I keep asking and asking louder for equality in life. People need to give us awareness on our rights. And about seeking a job, I want to share one of my experience. At first, after I had an accident, I tried to work as artist manager as before. I managed everything online perfectly, contacted the customer was fine. My team of musicians was ready. We just wait for the day to work. And when that day comes, it was a private party in very big and beautiful house. I went there with my musicians. Everybody can get into the house. They are all welcome, except me, who is the manager. The reason was not about there is no ramp or the accessible way. The party owner said that to that one of my musicians that he think I will make that gorgeous party looks terrible because of I using wheelchair, I have one leg, and no one will consider that I work as live band manager of that party. What was my experiences mentioned about? I want to share my perspective that not only universal design needed or breaking environment barriers or equality inclusive society are important. One more thing is to change the attitude of common people who never lived their life close to persons with disabilities like us. We have ability in different fields. We are willing and waiting to work in jobs that we love. We want to be employed and receive wages to take care of ourselves, living independently, and let's ask for help. The gap between non-disabled and persons with disabilities needs to be reduced. And lastly, from the deepest from my thought, as women with disability, I think women with disabilities like me and many in our society, we have abilities. Please don't judge us at first when you know nothing about us. Please open your mind widely to give us an opportunities to have jobs, and our society will be developing by leaps and bounds. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, Miss Titifon. Thank you. Yeah, I could be agree more. No, being a wheelchair user, accessibility is indeed an issue for, especially for infrastructures. Even in the Philippines, we're facing the same issues. I've been seeing questions and insights in our chat box. We'll receive it later with Miss Maria for the question and answer portion. So stand by for that. Moving on, let's continue to our next speaker, Miss Kenshi Francine Ofamin. She's from Polomolok Association of Persons with Disabilities, and her question assigned is, what are the risk mitigation measures to ensure youth with disabilities stay employed? Miss Kenshi from the Philippines, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kevin. To our organizers, partner organizations, our colleagues representing the countries invited, to everyone watching this event from all around the Asia and the Pacific, good afternoon. I am very humbled and I am very happy to be sharing to you some of my experiences as a young adult who craves for an opportunity to be in the employment world. When I was still studying in college, with the course of Bachelor of Science in Psychology, a lot of advice were given to me. My teachers told me that graduating with honors will get you to job opportunities easier. And this pushed me to finish my degree with what everyone called it to be flying colors. And I did. But then I realized even if I had good marks on my transcript, it wasn't actually a sure ticket for employment. And this may have something to do with being a person with disability. And there was this time when I was interviewed, I was asked at the end of the conversation, could you do the job? Could you do this? So I felt like, oh, it's like this. The conversation started off like the interviewer was interested with me, but doubts were slowly slipping in. And there I thought, maybe some employers want to hire persons with disabilities, but uncertain in the end. Which to me, as how I saw it, it was maybe brought by the lack of knowledge on the processes and the approach to hiring persons with disabilities. And for this experience of mine, I can say that this, it is essential to include, number one, my first point, sensitivity trainings in companies and government agencies. How can I say that it should be included? These can promote a culture of respect towards one another, regardless of race, gender, and even physical appearance, which contributes largely to making us feel inferior. And these trainings can earnestly impart to them how persons with disabilities should be part of the employment world, creating a diversified environment wherein different views can be catered. So I hope employers include this in their workplaces, because there are times when trainings just happen when unfortunate incidents occur, and they conduct this to reconcile people together, and that's it. So these trainings will be beneficial both ways for employers and persons with the disabilities, especially in keeping persons with disabilities employed, as this will lead to the importance of the second point, accessibility. Not just physical access, but especially in the digitization, wherein technology is in constant development because of the pandemic. How sure are we that persons with disabilities also experience the easement of these advancements in workplaces if it doesn't consider persons with disabilities with technological features that, might not be applicable to some? Once accessibility is evident and present in the company, this will likely help persons with disabilities remain employed, which contributes to their feeling of acceptance. Third, communication. Communication through the right terminology to use when being with a person with disability. It should also be a factor for persons with disabilities to stay in a workplace and be employed, as it contributes to healthy relationships among workmates, and discrimination can be eradicated through the right way of addressing. Since I have experienced myself being called with the adjectives that has insulted me with regards to my physical appearance. And it is sad, actually, that people think calling us with these names is actually fine just because it is commonly done by others too. The right way of addressing is essential, especially to educate those who are still clueless of what is ethically right to say or act. And of course, to encourage persons with disabilities, we can also contribute in breaking the hindrances between the employers and us through the fourth point and my last point, knowing our rights. Knowing our rights. Knowing our rights and privileges shall help us to voice out and be heard. Not because we lack and we have no choice but to ask them to suffice our needs, but because we can and we are capable. So let us be informed and let us encourage one another that we shall not stay in the dark for too long, because we are born to shine, just like how others can. And that's because we are capable, because we can. And there are a lot more ways to encourage and educate people in inclusivity, especially in education and employment for persons with disabilities. These points I have shared are all based on my own experiences. And for sure, there are more persons with disabilities out there that have experienced different situations in this phase of their life. And I hope we don't limit the solutions to what is just seen, but look into the deeper cause of such challenges to be able to address every need we have to cater. And every sector shall meet halfway in order to achieve that balance within the society. Let us not make inclusivity a dream to be achieved, because in the first place, it should be real. With the help of various sectors, let's make inclusivity real, as it is our right and it is one of the most humane things to have in this world. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Miss Kenshi Ofamin. Wow, what a your sharing really moved everyone. I cannot agree more and further. Sensitivity is really a thing for persons with disabilities. Commonly, we are being labeled, being shy because of our appearances and capacities, being judged by the community. Yeah, indeed. This should be something to be addressed. That's what you're trying to say. And the privileges and the benefits that we are enjoying must not be associated with mere mercy, charity, but a right-based privileges and benefits. Thank you, Miss Kian. What a wonderful sharing. Moving forward, let's now welcome our next speaker. She is a co-founder and general manager of We Edit Vietnam, graphic solution services company which aims to provide equal job opportunities for young people with disabilities. She will answer the last but not the least question, of course. What practical actions can be taken in short, medium, and long term to enable youth with disabilities acquire the right skills and the right job post-COVID-19? To be financially independent, what measures can be helpful? Everybody, let's welcome Ms. Vu Thi Kuyen. Ms. Kuyen, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to be here today, and thank you for the question, Kevin. In my opinion, the practical action we need to do in the short term is we need community support packages for the vulnerable group who are on the risk of losing job, include the youth with disability. For the medium and long term, first, I think that training program and enrich skill are really important. We need to raise the understanding of the value of competency training and self-esteem promotion for those with disability. We need to think about it as a new way of education for all the disadvantaged groups. Please do not educate in the way of pity or disadvantaged. It will help a lot to make them more confident, more independent, and it is the essence of each individual and an opportunity for them to be economically autonomous. Second, there should be cooperation program between the states, enterprises, training institutions, and centers to support young people with disability on career orientation issues. Vocational training also play a really important key role in the basic of orientation, paving the way for accessing high quality jobs, ensuring adaptation to the ultimate period. It is important that vocational education is appropriate the ability of young people with disability. It can be a combination of general vocational education background or on institutional career counseling. The provision of disability law may also create barriers for some businesses when they cannot afford to invest in disability-friendly facility, especially as the SME. Or they are also interested in the tax incentive, so the government needs to link the issue like offering tax incentive and financial support packages to encourage business to recruit disadvantaged groups. In addition to tax reduction and simplification of the procedure, workers with disability wage after apprenticeship may be partially paid by the state budget during the probationary period. So the government should also consider specifying the specific percentage of job position reserved for the vulnerable worker in enterprise. And last but not least is that we need to utilizing the technology 4.0 as a useful tool in training necessary soft skill, interviewing skill, communicating skill for people with disability. I also recommend that we have a national electronic job portal for people with disability. We will connect businesses with the worker with disability as well as create a sustainable network of job offers for those with disability and people with disability. And to answer the how it can be financial independent, I think first of all, we will need to talk about the psychology strength with the people with disability. Before doing anything, we need to think about that we should step out of our comfort zone and limited relying on our family and limited funding. Please don't think that the disability is a hydrant. Don't wait for the support from others. Be proactive with the life. Secondly, it's the education. I always believe that education is really important as the knowledge is powerful. So try to study and reach the highest education possible and don't stop to find a chance to enrich the knowledge and wisdom. And after you have a very good education and knowledge, you need to be employed. If you don't have much experience, then seek for the job that not require experience, even with low salary. Think about it as an education fee to gain experiences. And when you have a job, if you have income, when you have income, then please don't use it all. You should save some around 50 or 20%, something like that. And try to be a smart financial management. Note down what you have spent and review after a week to week or a month to see how you manage your money, to see if you can save anything from not week or not month. And finally, understand about financial support and tax policy so that you can ask for help from the local government. So yeah, that is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you for such a wonderful contribution. Yeah. Well, I must thank you all speakers for such an insightful and valuable contributions and the attention from the audiences today. It is indeed an honor for me to be part of this webinar. Thank you all also to the organizers who gave me opportunities to be a moderator and to facilitate such interesting session. I will hand back to you now, Miss Catherine.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin, for your facilitation of the panel discussion. So in the interest of time, let us just jump straight to the Q&A. Let me take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Maria Qureshi. Maria is an education specialist at UNICEF East Asia Pacific Regional Office. She is also the focal point for the cross-sectorial work on education and children with disabilities, multilingual education, and ethnic minorities. Maria will help to facilitate the Q&A session as well as provide some reflections and closing remarks for this webinar. So over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Catherine. Can you all hear me properly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you to all the speakers. It was, I think, really inspirational to hear from you about, the struggles that you all had to face, and how you persevered. And I think your stories are an eye-opener and a source of, I think, motivation for a lot of people, who are listening to you. And we are really, really privileged that we could have you talk about, the difficulties that you have faced. I do not want to take a lot of time because we have a lot of questions from the audience. I do want to say that in case we are not able to get to all the questions, please know that we will take a note of your questions and we will circulate these questions to our panelists. And the panelists will respond to it, when we get back to the audience with the materials from this webinar. So please do know that we have noted down your questions, and even if we don't get to them during this webinar because of limited time, we will get back to these questions at a later stage. I see a lot of questions in the Q&A box, and also, the questions that were sent to us while you registered for the webinar on remote learning and education. And as Catherine said, a lot of those responses you can find, from our last webinar where a lot of these questions were addressed. Only this morning there was a webinar with UNICEF where there was a focus on education for people with disabilities, and there were a lot of case studies discussed from this region. So I would also request if you can have a look once the materials are disseminated. I will start with one question and ask our panelists to respond to that. If you could please be very brief in your responses, maybe like 40 seconds each, or no more than a minute, and we can see if we have more time, we can get to more questions. So the first question that I wanted to start with was that in the light of COVID-19, we know that the future of work is uncertain. There will be jobs that don't exist today. And if you have any recommendations or key messages that you want to share with policymakers, organizations, to ensure that youth with disabilities can retain their jobs and find new employment opportunities. So please, the floor is yours. Leslie, we can start with you, so we can go in the order, of the panelists.
My apologies. If you can just repeat the question again, please.
Yes. So in the light of COVID-19, we know that the future of work is very uncertain. There will be, the jobs which we have today for youth with disabilities might not exist in the future. And in this period of uncertainty, what are the key messages that you would share with the policymakers, employers, organizations to ensure that youth with disabilities can retain their jobs or they can find new and better employment opportunities?
you for your question. Just to answer that, for this COVID-19 here in the Pacific Islands, in this island of Fiji, it really took us by surprise, and most persons with disabilities were left out in information of what is COVID-19 or the different types of disabilities. My recommendation I'll give in whatever discussion, is it on institutional policy, education, or on health, to invite a disability rep to be there, to be part of the policy decisions, so they can highlight issues of persons with disabilities so no one is left behind. Thank you.
Can we move on to the next Krishna?
Yes, I think important is to include training programs for youth with disabilities. How we can get them together. We should not worry about looking at their disabilities, but train them how they can be put in the workforce. And also, again, I stress affirmative action is important, and how they can establish their own, to think of innovative ways to be able to establish their business. And also we must create an enabling environment for them to fully participate. So whatever the barriers are, institutional, attitudinal, and with the different kinds of barriers, this needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Adi.
Yes, I think from my perspective, especially in the public sector employment, so the government of Indonesia is committed to being civil servants with disabilities in 2021 and beyond, because the current civil servants, they are already old, so they have to get retired, and then of course they will be replaced by young people, and among other young people are of course young people with disabilities. And the Minister of Law has also spoken with the Minister of Civil Servant Management that the government will allocate certain amount of job vacancies that can be accessed by people with disabilities. Thank you.
I think it's Titi Horn.
From my point of view, I think the challenge of the COVID-19 period is not only for PWDs. I think everybody face the problem about like unemployed or something. I think the thing that we can do is we learn more and do the things that we can do our best. And because not only PWD needs job at this time, I think that common people, many people in society also unemployed and need help and need jobs and need to get money and many things. So we have a big challenge, bigger than before, I think, and we have to learn new things, to do something remotely, to like the social jobs or other thing that we can do at home. No need to go out to do things, because is like many people already out a lot. We can do things by ourselves at home and do our best, and just find the jobs online or the things that easy to start, and just maybe we just start and do the little things to have income, and we will move to the next step later. But only at this time, do the things that you can do is the best one for me, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kianchi.
Hello, good afternoon. So, oh wait, am I gonna answer my question already? The one for me. Okay, there are a lot of ways actually, but this is in the perspective of course, from my perspective, um, with regards to sensitivity trainings and um, how to em- how to provide awareness to everyone, I can only say that implementation is very important, you know, because it is important to implement, to have a continuous session and trainings for not only for stakeholders but for persons with disabilities, especially now that we are facing a pandemic and uh, there is a freeze in hiring. So employment is very uh, is in its lowest point as of this moment. So even persons with disabilities need to have these trainings because they may also know how to assess or communicate and be sensitive with other types of disabilities too. So although there may be policies about disability already in the country, because of the lack of knowledge of the people about disability and sensitivity, it cannot be implemented rightfully. The disability laws and the related policies, because we lack knowledge of it, what to do, how to do this, why we need to do this. So I think the implementation of it must be done continuously because what can we do? We just can't jump from this to the next level if we can't do the basics yet. So I think that's what I can say about the sensitivity awareness and trainings for government agencies and even stakeholders and even the private companies and even for the persons with disabilities themselves, because even some are still clueless or they don't have that enough knowledge about their rights, about what privileges and what other uh, things they can do actually in the employment sector and even in the education sector of the country. So I guess that will do it. The continuous help also from the uh, NGOs, our organizations, to keep pushing, you know, encourage people, because not it may be a slow process, but always doing it will let it work. So I guess that's my take on the question about sensitivity trainings for me. Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Quinn?
Yeah. In my opinion, you know, that no one could predict that COVID-19 could visit what crazy and so many people losing job, and the people with disability, I think that they are on the highest risk. So in my opinion, that we, like same with other panelists, that we keep focus on training, and when you are working at home and you have more time, the people with disability also need to enrich their knowledges and skills too. And we don't know what happens in the future as well. So they should be prepared and ready and get adapted to any change. And also with the government, I think that we should have some kind of webinar like this in the national level. And the government should talk to their citizens to know, uh, what the need of the disability citizen in their country is, so that they can have the suitable policy or support for them. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I will, I think, just summarize briefly what we discussed in this webinar and just give a very, very brief comments from my side. And then for the rest of the questions, we please know that we have taken a note of them, and then we can always get back to the panelists and ask them for detailed responses. But thank you so much to the panelists to give their perspective on this very important and pressing question. It was really insightful to get these thoughts from you, because I think you know the best about your needs, and it was a great opportunity to learn about that from you. I would just summarize a few things that we have been hearing, and they resonate so much with this current scenario that we are facing. We've heard about the challenges in school, with regards to accessibility, identity, but then also with regards to curriculum. We also heard from the panelists on the limited access to the white-collar jobs, which is again a very, very pressing issue. Lack of inclusive policies, lack of coaching and mentoring and networking opportunities. We also heard about the issues for job seekers. Absence of data was also a very, very important finding that was discussed and highlighted, and how that's needed. If we are thinking about and talking about the need for good policies for disability inclusion. We got the perspective for the problems that women with disabilities face, and how we need to change our attitudes, how we need to deal with stigma and bullying. Again, a very important aspect that was discussed was diversity at workplace, and how digitization also needs to be accessible. So because we know with the whole COVID-19 pandemic, there's a whole added challenge of the digital divide, and how we might be further alienating and isolating the population which faces disabilities, because we are relying a lot on technology now. So we cannot only introduce technology, we need to make sure that it is disability inclusive. There was a very important discussion on the practical actions post-COVID, how disability law should be taking certain things into account, how financial management is extremely important for our youth with disabilities. And I would like to really take this opportunity to talk more about what Felix said. I think it was a great invite from you, Felix, at the very beginning to say that inclusion is everyone's responsibility. And please, I just want to share with everyone that at UNICEF, we support youth with disabilities, and we want to help them reach their full potential, whether it be through inclusive education or through employment. And we cannot leave it at any stage. It's a proper process. It's a transition. We need to ensure that they get a proper transition from preschool to basic education, to vocational training, and tertiary education, and then to the job market. And at any stage, you can rely on UNICEF to provide that support to our youth with disabilities. As you would know that we recently launched the CPLM 2019 regional assessment, and we shared the findings in the main report. And a very, very compelling finding of the report is the alarming trends of inequities and poor learning in the region. And 1 out of 3 children not learning what they are supposed to be learning at grade 5. And we can only imagine how stark these differences would be, how much more challenging this situation would be when we take into account the youth with disabilities, and how the multiple challenges that they face would aggravate the whole learning loss, and then translate into difficulties for the job market and all those other things that we spoke about. So I believe that we all need to join hands. We all need to play our part. UNICEF has a strong advocacy agenda, and we have always supported children with disabilities. I would also take this opportunity to thank our adolescent development team, who is working tirelessly in this area. Our disability inclusive team, headed by Lee Wei. And they're all working on supporting guidance and tools for children and youth with disabilities. So I think this is a very, very important step and a very, very useful discussion that we have just started today. And it would be great to see and to have more synergies with partners working in this area to take this conversation forward, and not only the conversation but to really translate this into practical actions to make sure that no one is left behind in learning and in employment. Thank you so much once again, and thank you also to Barkha, Catherine, Christy, Lynn, and I'm sorry if I'm missing out anyone, for putting this together and for all the hard work. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Maria, for your facilitation and also for your closing remarks. We are right on time. So this is the end of the webinar. Let me just extend my thanks again to all the co-organizers, UNESCO, UNICEF, Leonard Cheshire, and ILO for organizing this event. But most of all, thank you to the panelists, all the speakers, to the moderator as well. And all the participants that have joined us. Before you leave, you'll be redirected to the exit survey. So please help to complete the short survey so that we can improve on our next webinar. So thank you and goodbye. Please stay on for the photo. Can we have a with everyone? Can you turn on your camera? Okay. Is everybody here? Okay, thank you. Can we take a photo? 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah. Oh, one more, please. Just one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that looks good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Catherine.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.